Welcome to Silk Road Channel, the bridge to light. Once upon a time, in a small village hidden in a valley, there was a boy named Thien An. He lived with his mother in a small, old house. His father passed away when Thien An was very young, leaving him and his mother with an endless pain and an extremely difficult life. Thien An's mother was a gentle and faithful woman. Every night she would whisper a prayer saying, "My child, no matter how difficult life is, you must remember that God is always with us. God never abandons those who believe and live according to his love." Thien An loved his mother, but he did not understand what she said. He often looked up at the sky and asked, "Where is God, mother? Why have I never seen him? If he is here, why do we suffer so much?" His mother just smiled and stroked Thien An's messy hair. "One day, you will understand." An unexpected event. One cold winter, Thien An's mother fell seriously ill. With no money to buy medicine, the boy sat by his mother's bed, tears rolling down his cheeks. His heart was filled with despair and anger. He ran out of the house screaming in the middle of the deserted field, "Oh God, where are you? Why did you let my mother suffer like this? I hate you." He cried for a long time in the cold winter. When he was exhausted and collapsed, a gentle voice rang out like a passing wind. "My child, why do you blame me when you have never come to me with all your heart?" He looked around in surprise. There was no one, only the wind and the vast fields. But strangely, his heart suddenly felt light. He remembered his mother's words, "Believe and love." Love changes everything. The next day, Thien An decided to do something. He went to knock on every door in the village, asking them for some food or some change. At first, many people refused, but when they saw his determined eyes and his honest words, "Please help me save my mother. God taught us to love each other." Right? Gradually, the hearts of the villagers were moved. They donated money and medicine for his mother. An old man in the village even told him, "My son, sometimes God does not appear before us, but he is in the hearts of the people around us, the love, the compassion we have for each other." Thanks to everyone's love, Thien An's mother gradually recovered. One beautiful morning, she hugged him and said, "Do you see, my dear? God never abandons us. God speaks to you through the hearts and hands of the people around us." For the first time in his life, Thien An felt God's teachings. He understood that God was not a distant figure, but a love that was always present between people, a guiding light when we thought we were lost. From then on, Thien An became someone who always helped those in need, just like the village had helped his family. And every night, he whispered a prayer, no longer to ask for anything, but to give thanks. "Thank you, Lord, for teaching me to love." As time passed, Thien An grew up to be a healthy and compassionate young man. From the day his mother recovered from her illness, he always carried God's teachings in his heart. Live with love, and that love will guide you. A new journey. One day, a great flood occurred in the village. The pouring rain that lasted for many days caused the big river next to the village to overflow its banks, carrying away rocks and soil and destroying many houses. The poorest families were the ones who suffered the most. Thien An and the villagers rushed to help the elderly and children and set up temporary shelters. But in the midst of that disaster, he noticed that some people began to blame him. "Where is God that makes us suffer like this? He has abandoned us." Those words made Thien An's heart ache. He looked everywhere. The water was vast, people were struggling to survive, but there were still hands holding each other, shoulders carrying the elderly and weak through the rushing water. He stood in the rain, tightly holding the hand of a child who had just been rescued. His eyes were steadfast, and he raised his voice. "God has never abandoned us. He is here, right now. He is in the people who are sharing food and clothes, in the hands that are helping each other. Don't let fear make us forget the love he has sown in our hearts." Thien An's words were like a ray of light piercing through the thick rain. Everyone fell silent, then continued their work with greater enthusiasm. They began to share food, light fires to warm the cold and wet people, and build more sturdy temporary shelters. Thien An became the leader in that time of trouble. He had no power, no great strength, but with love and strong faith, he gave everyone hope. A little miracle. After many days of hardship, the rain finally stopped. When the sun rose in the sky, shining its first warm rays, the villagers saw a new picture before them. Although the village was still in disarray, human love had lit up the fire of hope and faith. An old man who had blamed God before came to Thien An, held his hand and said, "My son, now I understand. God does not create miracles with his hands. He creates miracles with the hearts of people like you. You are the bridge that leads us to the light." Thien An smiled. He knew he was just an ordinary person, but by listening to God's teachings and giving love, he had done something greater than he had ever thought. The end and the beginning. Many years later, Thien An became a person loved and respected by the villagers. He built a small chapel on a high hill where people could come to pray and share. On the wall of the chapel is engraved a line, "God is in the love we give. Love one another, and we will see him." People from all over the place come to that chapel not only to pray but also to learn how to love and help one another. They call Thien An the bearer of God's light, but he just shakes his head and says, "That light is always in our hearts. We only need to open our hearts to see it." The final part, the fire that never extinguishes. Many years have passed. Thien An has grown old. His hair is now white. His shoulders are no longer as strong as before, but his eyes still sparkle with faith and love like before. The small chapel on the high hill has now become a place of refuge for many people, a place where people come to when their hearts are heavy, to find peace. One winter afternoon, Thien An sat on the steps of the chapel, watching the sunset gradually fall. He remembered the long journey he had gone through, the difficult days with his mother, the flood of the past, and many other challenges. But the miraculous thing is that he never felt lonely. A little boy named Min, orphaned since childhood and raised thanks to the care of the village, ran to Thien An. Min placed a hot loaf of bread in his hand and said, "Grandpa, I brought you some bread. Don't sit outside in the cold." Thien An smiled. Her trembling hands took the cake and gently stroked Min's hair. "Thank you, Min. Do you know, you and little things like this are the fire of God in my heart." Min tilted his head, his big round eyes looking at Thien An, filled with curiosity. "Who is God, Grandpa? I have never met God." Thien An looked at the boy, his voice as gentle as a breeze. "God is not someone far away, my child. God is right here, in your heart, in the cake you share with me, in the hugs you give to your friends, in the smiles you give to others. God teaches us to love, and when you know how to love, you have met God." Min was silent for a moment, then smiled brightly, hugging Thien An. "So you have met God. I will continue to love a lot like you taught me." Thien An's eyes lit up with indescribable joy. He looked towards the distant horizon, where the late afternoon sun was radiating a warm light that seemed to embrace all things. He whispered in his heart, "Dear God, I thank you for letting me be your little tool. My life has been lived fully in the love you have given me." A lamp that is always on. A few months later, Thien An slept peacefully in the small chapel. The villagers held a warm farewell party for him. No one cried or complained, because they understood that Thien An had never left them. He was still there, in every stone of the chapel, in every prayer, and most of all, in the hearts of everyone. In front of the small altar where there was a gentle, smiling portrait of Thien An, people lit an oil lamp. They called it the lamp of love. Every day, each visitor poured oil into the lamp to keep it lit. The boy Min, now an adult, became the caretaker of the chapel. Min often tells people the story of Thien An, about the teachings of God that he passed on. Love, help each other even in the smallest things, because in each of those actions, God is always present. His fire never goes out in the hearts of those who know how to love. And so from generation to generation, the teachings of God, through the life of Thien An, have become a fire that never goes out. No matter how much time passes, no matter how difficult life is, that light always guides hearts that know how to trust and love. Because God is in the love we give, and that love is the most beautiful thing that people can keep forever.